I'll be honest with you guys, it was hard to make the call on this month's video because on the one hand, it's been a long time since we've seen a nice dusty, foggy system, which I'm kind of in love with. On the other hand, we had some really cool Nebula tech breakthrough this month, so I just couldn't bear to cover them up with any kind of fog, so I went with the clear system again. Yeah, tough call. Anyway, this is Limit Theory Development Update number 17, May 2014. Thanks for tuning in. Got some cool stuff to show today. Unfortunately, I don't feel like it's quite as cool as last month, but that comes and goes, and some months just feel better than others. But anyway, I'm excited to show you some of this stuff I've been working on. In the background right now, of course, we're going to start with graphics, and I just want to show off these new nebulas a little bit because I didn't even really mean to work on them, but I just had this idea and it worked out really well. And the result is that we have some really nice looking nebulas. I mean, we already did, but they look even better now. And you got to remember, these are 100% procedural, which means, of course, they're unique. In every system you visit, it's got its own feel, it's got its own nebulas. And they look pretty darn good, in my opinion. Other than those, I've been working on the shaders here and there, and more specifically on some post-processing techniques, trying to get some advanced color stuff happening to just get this more artistic feeling to the game. Because if there's one thing that I think defines Limit Theory's aesthetic, it's that of kind of artistic space, which is what I really wanted for my Dream Space game. So if you notice that the colors are kind of more vibrant or more interesting, well, I hope you do. That was the intention. If you don't like it, you can turn it off. I say that about everything, but it is true. I'm just going to give you some time to absorb this system's aesthetics. It's looking good. Pretty much the same station as we saw last time. Oh, and I don't know if you've noticed already, but I threw in an orbital ring of asteroids just for fun. Just because I can. That lens flare is still looking pretty good. I'm going to turn on the dust clouds. It's not a foggy system, but we can still have some interesting clouds. Alright, so pretty much what we're going to be talking about this time is some high-level gameplay mechanics and some high-level AI. I feel like AI is just a staple of LT. We have to talk about it every time. Anyway, in the distance, what I'm seeing on screen is a secret science vessel. Now that sounds kind of interesting. You can name your assets anything you like in LT, so of course I named mine a secret science vessel. It's pretty big, so I'm not sure if it's going to stay secret for so long, but oh well. Anyway, we're going to talk about technology and science today. So a few months ago, I showed the first kind of prototype of the procedural tech tree in Limit Theory, which is a very cool thing because the whole game is procedural, all the items and objects and everything. It opens up the door for this kind of infinite procedural research system, which is now pretty much fully implemented, and we're going to talk about it a little more extensively. We're actually going to do some research on board this secret science vessel. So let me open it up. And now in my hard points, which is a work in progress, of course, I can see I have a tech lab. So a tech lab is a pretty large hard point, if you want to call it that. It's really an internal module, and it can only be fitted to a very large ship or a station. But I do have one on board my trusty secret science vessel. I also have a blueprint in the cargo hold. Now, a blueprint is basically one half of the research system in LT. What's interesting about the way research is now implemented is that it's all physically based, meaning it's all based on objects, and I'm going to explain why that's so cool later. So now I've dug into my tech lab, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to start a research task. So you can see I've got some unique tasks that we've never seen before that are applicable just to this research lab. So I'm going to go ahead and click research, and then I'm going to see a list of all the blueprints that I have available to research. Research is done directly on blueprints. So you're going to select a technology that you want to try to advance, and then you're going to go for it. Now I've sped up research significantly. I always kind of speed things up for the demos, so we should be getting some breakthroughs very quickly. In reality, research... Oh, there we go. Already, I've discovered a new blueprint, and I'll talk about what that means. In reality, research is a pretty slow process, so you're going to select the blueprint that you want to research, and then you're going to kind of leave it running while you go do other things. I'm just going to wait for a little while because we'll probably get a few more since I've sped it up so much. But the idea is that what we're going to be doing is researching technologies based on an existing technology, and they're going to be a little bit better, and they're going to be a little bit different, and that's going to offer some interesting choices. It's just like I showed before with the procedural tech tree, where I selected a node and researched off that, but now it's all explicitly in blueprints. So let me cancel this. It looks like we've already made several breakthroughs. And let's see what we got. So I now have 4 new blueprints. Now, in a world where limit theory was finished, these would all have their own icon and they would be named something different. But a lot of stuff is kind of not polished at the moment. If I go into these blueprints, I can see this not polished display where I'm looking at the attributes of the item. So these blueprints are for transfer units, and I can see all these sort of attributes of them. Now the blueprint that I researched off of had 1 for all of them, which is just meaning like it's a very basic balanced blueprint for a transfer unit. Now if I look at these derived blueprints, or the ones that I've just discovered, they're going to be slightly different. Each of them is going to have a kind of different characteristic makeup, which will make them a sort of unique type of transfer unit. Now they're all a little bit better than the base technology, and unfortunately there's not a way to see that at the moment. What we're seeing right now, though, is that they're all a little different as well. This transfer unit transfers a little bit faster. It's got a higher rate, but at the expense of compactness. That means that it's heavier, so it's going to take a stronger hardpoint to mount, and it's going to take up more space on your ship. So all these have different attributes, and that is really part of the core of the LT research system, which I'd talked about previously, is basically the idea that you can make trade-offs and kind of specialize in the technology that you want to specialize in. Now what's interesting to note is that if I continue to do research off of one of these new blueprints, I'm actually going to get what you might call a 3rd generation technology. I'm going to get a blueprint derived from a blueprint, which was derived from a blueprint. And so you see, you can keep pushing in whichever direction you want. Now I'm going to do the second part of research, which is creating assembly chips. I'll explain the theory of that a little more in detail later. But right now I'll just select a blueprint. Again, in an ideal world where the game is finished, I would be able to tell which blueprint I was selecting. Right now I'm not actually sure which one I selected. But I'm creating assembly chips now, and notice that that's done through the tech lab. Now assembly chips basically are required to create an item. In order to produce a new item, you need an assembly chip for that item, and you need the raw materials required to make it. Again, I'll explain in more detail why I introduced that assembly chip later. But right now I'm going to go to a production lab. This secret science vessel also has production capabilities, and I'm going to create a production task using that assembly chip that I just created. Now we should be showing raw materials, but again, the UI is largely unpolished in terms of content, so we can't, but I happen to know that the production requirements for that are available on my ship because I placed them there. So now I'm going to be producing that new transfer unit that I just researched. So this is kind of cool. I actually just created an entirely new item procedurally, and I'm about to produce it. So that's a pretty cool concept, In this game, you can actually invent new items and produce them and then use them. So I've already created 30. Again, everything's sped up, and the raw material requirements were vastly simplified for this so that I wouldn't have to go scavenging. But so basically what I'm doing now, since I've got a tech lab and a production lab on the same ship, it's a pretty big ship, I can actually create assembly chips and assemble the item on the same ship. So I'm just pumping out these transfer units. I've already got 60 of them. It looks like I'm producing the ones that are slightly more power efficient and slightly less compact. That's not a very interesting trade-off in my opinion, but that's how it goes. You can really you can get anything. Research is a grab bag, and that's the way I've designed it, because research, in my opinion, should be a grab bag. It's a very uncertain mechanic, unlike production, which is a very certain mechanic. So now that that's going on, well, let's see. I'll talk a little bit more about the theory between the blueprint assembly chip split in a minute. Right now I want to move on to the missions component of this update, which is really the second big component. So this month I've introduced missions, which are the highest of the high-level concept in LT. So right now I'm showing the commodity market, which we've seen for the past 2 updates. And the commodity market is kind of half of the transactions that occur in LT. The other half are based on missions, and missions are where you can specify more interesting, more abstract things. Now the missions interface, like most of the UI, is largely kind of dev-ish at the moment, but I'm just going to go in and look at this mission called Damage the Enemy. Very, very enticing name, right? But it's actually pretty interesting how the mission system in LT works. Basically, the way it works is there is a reward pool, which is kind of the money that can be gained by doing this mission. And then there is a goal, but the goal is scalable. So in this case, Damage the Enemy, the goal for this mission is to just do damage to assets of the faction StarTech Corporation. Now this is a very, very broad mission. It means it's very flexible. Basically, I can take this mission and all I have to do is inflict damage on any asset from StarTech Corp, and I'm going to get paid according to how much damage I do, up to the amount of reward pool that's available. So this is a pretty interesting mission system, but it's actually very elegant because the AI is easily able to use it and use it in a very intuitive way, as well as the player. So I can't yet post missions, but the player will be able to post missions for the AI to do. I'm going to try to find a ship from StarTech Corp so that I can show how this actually works in practice. The neat thing about the way missions are framed in LT is that a lot of times they're much less about discrete actions, about these kind of one-shot things, and much more about jobs, kind of continual things that you can do. I can go around and hunt StarTech Corporation ships all day long, and as long as the person who posted that mission continues to put more and more money into the reward pool, as long as they continue to replenish it while I'm getting paid, I can keep doing it. And basically this can be a continuous job for me. I can go around and essentially work for this person who posted the mission, and they can continue paying me. So it's not necessarily a one-time thing. Now some missions can be, but in general the way the missions work in LT is that they are continuous processes. The whole game is kind of based around the idea of continuous processes, as you probably noticed with the whole project interface last time. So now that we got some downtime, because I want to fly to this asteroid field where people are mining and hopefully hunt down some StarTech assets, let me just explain a little bit more about the whole blueprint assembly chip split. So the cool thing about how tech works, and the thing that gets me really excited about it now, is that it's not just some abstract tech tree that's kind of hidden away in a menu somewhere. It's actually all based on physical items, which means it opens up the door for some very cool gameplay potential. Namely, technology can actually be destroyed, it can be sold, or it can be stolen, because technology is blueprints. Right? That's essentially where the tech tree is now. It's explicitly stored in those physical items. So if someone's moving around a piece of technology, i.e. a blueprint, that's a high value target, and if it gets destroyed, that piece of technology is actually lost, which can be very good for people who were not the person who owned that technology. Even better, if it gets stolen, well, you can gain an entirely new piece of technology. So I think that's very cool. It's not realistic, of course, but again, LT is designed not from a standpoint of realism, but from a standpoint of gameplay and fun. So I'm excited about that potential. Now, the assembly chip idea is basically this. The person who controls the blueprint or who owns the blueprint does not necessarily want to give infinite ability to other people to make that item. Rather, instead of giving away the blueprint, what they want to do is just give people a limited ability to produce that item. So the owner of the blueprint actually controls the power to say how much of that item can be produced and at what cost. They do that by minting assembly chips. Now, not only does this allow greater control over the whole production process, but it creates this very neat coupling between production and research, because now, in order to continually produce an item, you also need to continually create assembly chips at a tech lab. So you see there's this symbiosis now between tech labs and production facilities, which is going to be a very important thing for the continuous processes of the universe. As I keep speaking, everything is about continuous action in LT. So I hope that makes sense. Now, also, it's worth noting that while, you can steal a blueprint, that's probably going to be pretty tough. You can also steal assembly chips, right? If you manage to take out a convoy that's carrying assembly chips, then you can steal them and produce that item. So that's another cool possibility that comes with all of the tech being framed in terms of physical items. Now, I should also note that there will still be a visible tech tree based on those items that you have. I just haven't, gotten around to that yet. So right now I'm looking for a StarTech Corp asset, going back to the mission, because I want to just try to make some money real quick for you guys to see how it works. Again, this is a very loose mission, and you might wonder why the AI would post such a kind of easy mission. But the answer is, if you're doing damage to their competition, which you are, that's the only reason they posted that mission, is because they were competing with StarTech Corp. And you're actually helping them. Any damage that you do to a StarTech Corp asset is money coming out of their competition's pocket. So you see, the AI is actually pretty clever about the way that it posts missions. It's only going to give you money for doing things that actually help it. And presumably the player will do the same thing. Here we go. I'll tell you what, these big ships are hard to catch once they get going. They're slow to accelerate, but they have a lot of thrusters on them compared to fighters, so they get moving pretty quickly. Ooh, okay. He's stopping now. Now, normally, I probably wouldn't want to attack this big of a ship, but retaliation is kind of disabled at the moment, so I'm not too scared of it. And you can see it's red, which means I have kind of made myself an enemy with StarTech Corp, but that's okay for now. You have to choose your friends and enemies in LT. Now, let's see if I did any damage. I did indeed. Now, this is interesting. Look at what I just went to. It's called the database. This is a new concept that has been introduced this month, is the concept of data. Data as not really an item, but as an entity that can be collected in the universe. Now, data can mean a lot of different things. In this case, I've acquired data that shows or that proves that I've damaged that ship that I just damaged. So basically, I've got a log file saying, look, I hurt that asset from StarTech Corp. Now guess what I can do? I can go into that mission and redeem that data. I can transfer it to the person who put up that mission and basically say, hey, look, I did what you wanted me to do. Give me my money. And indeed, wow, 2,000 credits. Not bad at all. I'm not sure why he paid that high, actually, but it looks like the reward pool is really high, so he really wanted to do damage to StarTech Corp, and I did a little bit, so you might say, well, that was too easy. Indeed, it was a little bit easy, mainly because retaliation isn't in. But at the same time, I created value for the person who posted that mission, because I damaged that ship, right? So I did indeed do work. Now, this is just the beginning of the mission content. The mission architecture is the important thing, that all of this stuff is actually working and in the game. But the actual mission content is a little bit, sparse at the moment. Obviously, that's a pretty broadly specified mission, not terribly interesting, and perhaps a little bit too easy. But it shows that the mission architecture is working, and it shows you how it works. And basically, that's through data. You're going to collect these pieces of data that show, that you've done a certain action, that you've discovered a certain thing, that you've, damaged or destroyed or stolen or discovered or explored or patrolled, and so on and so forth. And so basically, you have these pieces of information that show what you've done in the universe, and then certain people will be willing to pay you for certain pieces of information. That's basically how the mission architecture works. And again, it's all continuous, so most missions can be run as long as the person offering them continues to be interested in them. Let's see if I can catch up to this guy. I'd like to do a little bit more damage. I don't know if I'm going to be able to catch up to him, though. I don't think so. I'm going to try speeding up time. Dev feature. Oof. Looks like the game's kind of freezing up because I'm recording at the same time and trying to speed up time. Computer's not too happy about it. Oh well. I don't think I'm going to be able to catch up, so oh. Well, what do you know? They already took him out. So you see, that's interesting. You can see that last time we kind of had random piracy in the universe. Now we actually have AIs running missions for other AIs. So those two AIs were no doubt looking for the bounty on that StarTech Corp asset, which makes sense, right? Because they just redeemed their damage for money. So they're making money by doing the same thing that I just did. Keep in mind, again, that the AI and the player can always do the same things in LT. They're equally powerful. So now we've got AIs posting missions which influence the behavior of other AIs. Pretty cool stuff. Now, unfortunately, that does about sum up my work for this month. I'm a little bit sad that the actual content was not all there, but I'm very excited about the architecture that's in place now, because with the mission architecture, that basically wraps up all the levels of AI. That is the highest of the high AI. I call it the meta project AI because it's basically changing the way that the AI performs projects. The AI is trying to improve itself by eliminating competition or by teching up or expanding. And that is done through the mission architecture. So we've now basically got all the pieces of the AI in place, and we just have to fill it out with content. So I'm feeling very good about the actual living universe part of LT, and feeling very good about a lot of the game mechanics. So a lot of what remains to be done is fleshing out the content and polish, of course. So pretty cool. Thank you for joining me, and I hope you like those nebulas. I really do. So I hope to have more content next month, now that I've got a lot of this architecture in place. And, well, you know what to do. Join me again this time next month. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.